So what I'm building today is this is a 400 watt, well, it's rated at 400 watts, China made wind turbine, and all the instructions are in Chinese, of course, but so yeah, it's rated at 400 watts. Just coincidentally, it looks very similar to this US made AirX wind turbine, which is also rated at 400 watts. It says 400 watts peak, 300 watts continuous. Now I had this for it was a couple of years. There's an actual review up on YouTube on this one, and but what happened is, so where I am now, we get a lot of high sustained winds, and this one actually burned out. And okay, I'm not going to say the reason, but anyway, it does have safeties in it that's supposed to protect it. However, I think when you're continuously working your butt off, as this was, and eventually you burn out. And now this AirX wind turbine, I would say it cost about $500 at the time, and I would honestly say it outperformed $1,000 worth of solar panels, and it provided that electricity at times when the solar panels were starting to not produce anymore. So very good idea to have both wind and solar. Now this is the second one of these I've got. I've got two more. Sorry, wait a minute. Two more to install? Yeah, I've got two more to install after this one. I've got one already installed. I'll show you that real quick. And that's that one there. And what I found with these wind turbines is that unless you're in a hurricane or a tornado, cyclone or something like that, I don't think they're ever going to produce 400 watts. I've just never seen that. Like I checked the amperage. I regularly get sustained winds of 30 miles an hour, and most I can say I probably got is 5 to 10 amps of current, which is, what even at 5 amps at 12 volts is that 550 to, so it's 60 watts. So at 10 amps it would be 120 watts. So don't make your off-grid power decisions based on what these China-made wind turbines say. However, they perhaps have not lived up to their expectations as to how much power they produce and at what wind speeds. However, they seem to be able to handle the high winds I have up here. So in some ways they're actually better than the AirX, simply because they can not burn out. So anyway, that's what I'm doing now. I'm going to build this. About the only major bit of construction I have to do. You have this solid, if you can see that, solid metal plate. Alright, and it's meant to bolt on here, at the base of the wind turbine, and that's going to have to be welded onto the end of my tower. Okay. No big deal, I don't need a huge welder to do that. Also, although it would be good to get it totally centered, it probably doesn't have to be 100% centered either, because the tower doesn't actually move, and the wind turbine actually just rotates on the top of the tower, so Should be a fairly easy bit of installation, and it was last time. It was just a matter of welding and bolting it up there. All right. So the start to the tower is in this hole. That's going to be concreted, and I'm going to use this pole, which is just part of this is just my junk shed. It's where I put all my recycled wires and stuff that I need to keep out of the weather. And so I'm going to concrete that. You can see the two pieces of metal there, two pieces of steel, and they're going to be the base rails for the tower. That'll make more sense later. But all right, so ready to go there. Pause that for a minute while I get the welder set up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is weld on that plate onto the bottom. You can see that. All I'm going to be used to weld is a very small wire feed welder made by Century, FC90 if you're curious. And what's actually pretty cool is that I'm running this welder off my new inverter, which is a 3000 watt continuous 6000 watt peak inverter. So I should be able to weld, I haven't tried this yet, I should be able to weld this on using just that. First thing I'm going to do is just kind of line it up and tack weld it, just get it where I need it, and then I'm going to go around and weld the whole thing. I've already ground off, so this is a galvanized pipe, I've already ground off the galvanizing where the weld is, so it should make it weld a bit easier. So I've done my job of cleaning up the job before I start welding. And yeah, that is basically it. Turn on the welder, and once again I'm just kind of eyeballing it to begin with, and I'm looking around the outside, and I just want it just an even amount of spacing between all these. Tack it. So I've got it roughly tacked, then I can weld. Check that. That looks pretty good. Turn up my current a little bit, or voltage. Just tripped out. Trip back in. Tripped out again. Alright, so my inverter's not quite running this, I think. Trip back in. Alright, I might have to start the generator. But anyway, you get the idea. I need to weld this piece on, and then I'm going to bolt the wind turbine on top of it. Alright, so I've welded the plate on. Now I've got to pull through the cable, which is a... where is it? It's here somewhere. The cable I'm going to use is a recycled piece of 3 conductor wire, because because out of the wind turbine you have a 3-phase AC voltage coming out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push through this stiff copper wire first, push it all the way through to the end of the tower. There it is. And I'm going to tape on my 3-core and then pull it all the way through. Okay, so I taped the 3-core on the end of my single core stiff copper wire. This is just a single strand of copper, so it's fairly stiff. If you wanted to, you could use steel, it doesn't really matter. Or you use something stiff enough to push through the tower. And there you have it. There's my, had it here somewhere. There's my 3-core pulled all the way through the tower. So now I've got to solder those 3 conductors onto these 3 conductors that come out of the wind turbine. Okay, so most of the wire I'm dealing with is really old recycled wire. And I hope you can see that. See how old and dark looking that copper is. I am probably never going to be able to solder that effectively unless I clean it. And to clean it, all I do is dip it in some sulfuric acid. Sorry, not sulfuric acid, this is hydrochloric acid. Alright, I don't know if you see, it didn't take very long. And that copper is bright and clean. And now this is just clean water, fresh water. I'm going to dump it in that, give it a rinse off. Now I'm ready to solder those. Get my hydrochloric acid out of here so I don't spill it on myself. To solder it, it's just a matter of twist. I'm going to do all three at once. And it does help if you've got standard old lead and tin solder. If you have that lead-free or whatever the hell it is, it just doesn't seem to work as good as the old-fashioned stuff. Okay, so I've got those twisted together. Now it's just a matter of heating it up with the blowtorch and soldering it. I need to go get some other solder. And to solder it, you can use a soldering iron. Most of my soldering here on the ranch involves a little blowtorch. So I just heat the joint, then I apply the solder to the joint. There we go. That's a pretty good solder joint. That's number 1. Another pretty good solder joint. Number 2. 2, and then last one. Go. So now I've got 3 good solder joints. Wait for it to cool and then tape them thoroughly, and I'm good to start mounting and bolting up the wind turbine. Now it's just a matter of bolting everything up. If you have some Loctite, it may be a good idea to use them on these bolts here, but when I come to do the actual turbine, the fan, they've got locking nuts in them, so you shouldn't need to use Loctite there. And these bolts have split washers, so they should be okay too. But I just thought if I had some, I'd put it on there, but I don't have any today. Okay, I think I'm good. Alright, now the fan blade. As far as the fan's concerned, there's a nut through there. Or is it? No, it's the other way around. Bolt through there, and a nut now that tool, that and these 2 tools both came with my first one of these turbines, but it did not come in any of the, like I just recently bought 3, and those tools did not come in the next 3. So fortunately, you know, you can make do with all sorts of other stuff, socket sets and whatever, but I thought it was nice that, you know, they originally supplied the tools in the kit to do the job. So yeah, I'm just going to bolt up all of those blades. And I'll be ready to fit it to the turbine. Now it's just a matter of bolting up the blades. And there's one large bolt nut. Get that as much as possible started correctly. So it's a reverse thread. Now, with my first turbine, I started hearing noises in it, and I did not get this thing tightened up correctly first go round on my first turbine. So this time, so you can see that's still wobbly there. So I'm just going to make sure this time I tighten it down all the way until there is no flop in that. And lastly, if you want to fit the nose cone, do it now. Personally, I don't want the nose cone, so I'm just going to leave it off, and it is optional. And that is ready for me to it's ready to stand up, but I haven't got the base finished yet, so I'm going to turn it around, fill the base up with concrete, and let it sit till next week. So next week I'll be standing it and doing the wiring. So just finishing up for the day. Got that built. Just got to pour some concrete in the base there. I'm getting a second tower built, and be able to raise this up next week and get the electricals going. Getting ready to set up the second little wind turbine I've got, which is going up there. The pole in. I've still got work to do on the pole, but that's good enough for now. I've got to put in some decent. Just got that strap in. I'm going to put a couple more straps with aluminium. And so really all I've got to do now is just hook it up electrically. Now up in the wind turbine, it's a 3-phase AC coming out of the wind turbine. So I've got 3 wires especially if you're going to have wind gusts, it's probably a good idea to, just while you're working on things, twist these together, because that'll actually provide a break in the wind turbine and prevent it overspeeding. So there's that. I've got my wind controller. Basically what this is a rectifier, so it takes this 3-phase AC coming out of the turbine and it converts it into 12 volts. And there I've got my 12 volt coming out, the red and black, and it's going into my watt meter, amp meter, so power analyzer. Anyway, so that's so I can see how well the turbine's going to be working. So I've just got a little bit of soldering to do and a little bit of mounting, and the turbine should be running this afternoon. There's both those wind turbines, just barely spinning. The wind is fairly slow at the moment, but they're both going. And these are the rated at 400 watts, cost about $100. I'm sure they're made in China, but I think the last ones I got come out of New York. And I think I mentioned it at the beginning of this video on these, is that even though they don't quite live up to their rating, at 400 watts, at least I've never seen them do that yet. Maybe at 60 mile an hour wind they might do that. But what's good for me is that they produce something and seem to be able to withstand. We get a lot of high wind gusts up here, and they seem to be able to withstand that fairly well. Better than another wind turbine I had recently called an AirX. It was great. It produced a lot of power, but it didn't last very long up in these conditions.